The first unusual sign was the water itself, churned and frothing near the riverbank, as though something struggled just beneath the surface. A faint splash, a shuddering ripple, and then the small, soaked form of a tiger cub, barely clinging to the driftwood that carried it downstream. Its fur clung in dark, sodden clumps, and its tiny limbs trembled with exhaustion. She waded in without hesitation, her boots sinking into the soft, cold mud. Every careful movement aimed to keep the cub above the rushing current. The cub's golden eyes, wide and glassy, followed her every motion, blinking slowly in confusion and fear. Its small, plaintive mews mixed with the murmur of the river, almost too quiet to hear over the roar of water. As she reached the shore, she lifted the cub close, pressing it against her chest. Its warm body was small and fragile, trembling with fatigue, and the faint whimper told her it had been alone for far too long. Mud streaked its face, and one tiny paw bore a shallow scratch, evidence of its battle against the relentless current. The wind carried a hint of the forest, wet leaves, earthy moss, and the faint, distant call of other tigers. The cub's ears flicked at each sound, alert despite its weakness. She wrapped it gently in her coat, whispering, "Shoo, it's all right now." Her voice was a mere breath, careful not to startle him. But the shore held another surprise. A sudden rustle of leaves, low growls, and the faint patting of paws drew her gaze to the line of trees. A mother tiger, tall and lean, emerged slowly, her eyes wary but fixed on her cub. She froze mid-step, then stepped forward cautiously, sniffing the air, muscles tensing and relaxing in a rhythm of silent calculation. The cub chirped softly, recognizing her scent even from a distance. The moment stretched, suspended between fear and recognition. The mother circled the humans, sniffing and watching, before a low, guttural call echoed along the water's edge. The cub stirred, responding with a soft whine of relief, and for the first time, she saw the faintest flicker of trust in the mother's eyes. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of wet earth and fur. The cub nuzzled closer to her chest, and the mother's posture softened. Slowly, she moved forward, rubbing her head against her cub in a silent reunion. The human stepped back, giving space, heart pounding at the delicate balance between life, instinct, and trust. For a long while, none moved. The river whispered, birds called in the distance, and the forest exhaled a quiet, protective presence. Then, almost imperceptibly, the mother and cub moved together toward the shelter of trees, paws pressing into the damp earth, tails flicking in gentle rhythm. She watched them disappear into the shadows, a golden streak followed by a smaller one, the day softening into a golden sunset behind them. Even as she turned away, the weight of the moment stayed with her, the quiet bond witnessed, the fragile life saved, and the subtle miracle of trust restored. She walked back along the muddy shore, carrying the memory of those glimmering eyes and the echo of gentle growls, knowing some moments were too delicate to ever be forgotten. The unusual sign appeared almost immediately, a faint, erratic splash that cut through the river's steady hum. A tiger cub's tiny body bobbed helplessly against the current, fur plastered to its frame, eyes wide with panic. Its soft, urgent cries were barely audible beneath the roar of water, yet unmistakably human in their appeal. She dove in without hesitation, boots sinking into the soft mud as the cold river pushed back against her. Each step was deliberate, careful not to jostle the cub further. The cub's small paws flailed, thrashing against the driftwood that threatened to toss it back into the current. Its fur was matted, smeared with streaks of mud and river debris, and a tiny scrape on its flank glistened red against its soaked coat. Finally, she reached it, cupping the cub against her chest. The tiger's trembling body pressed into hers, warm but weak, its heart beating fast and erratically. She whispered softly, "It's all right. I've got you," letting her voice carry only the faintest human note, enough to soothe without startling. Behind her, the river continued its relentless rush, and the surrounding forest whispered with wind and distant bird calls. Each sound seemed amplified by the tense silence of the moment. The cub's ears twitched at every rustle, eyes following the subtle movements of branches, instinctively wary of everything. She adjusted her hold, keeping it steady against her body, feeling the fragile life trust her enough to stop struggling. Then came the next sign of trouble, a second ripple upstream, smaller, but deliberate. A mother tiger emerged from the trees, muscles coiled and cautious. Her eyes were sharp, scanning first the water, then the cub cradled in human arms. A low, rumbling growl vibrated through the forest, a warning and a question. She froze, each movement deliberate, her body tense yet graceful, ears flicking toward the human holding her cub. The cub stirred against her chest, nudging her gently as if urging calm. The mother's gaze softened, a subtle shift that suggested recognition. Slowly, she approached, paws sinking into the wet earth, the mud sucking softly at her pads. Her presence was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, yet there was no aggression, only careful, silent measurement. For a moment, the human hesitated, heart pounding, knowing that one wrong move could undo all the trust built in seconds. Then she took a step back, arms still holding the cub, and whispered, "Go, it's safe now." The mother extended her head toward her cub, nose brushing gently against the soft fur. The cub chirped, a tiny sound of relief, curling instinctively into the warmth of the reunion. The low growl eased into a soft rumble, a subtle melody of reassurance and recognition. Together, they moved, the mother guiding the cub toward the tree's shelter. Their bodies pressed close, shadows stretching long in the fading light, each step deliberate, careful, and tender. The river continued its song, carrying away mud and debris, the wind whispering through reeds and leaves. Sunlight pierced the canopy in scattered beams, painting golden streaks on wet fur and glistening water. She watched the mother and cub disappear into the forest, a delicate moment held in silence, the echoes of trust lingering in the air. Finally, she turned back, her boots leaving shallow imprints in the mud. Each step carried the quiet weight of what had transpired. Life saved, instincts honored, trust restored. The river's hum followed her, a constant reminder that in this world, courage and compassion often met in the smallest of gestures, and sometimes they created miracles that were more felt than seen. The first sign was subtle, a small ripple along the edge of the flooded meadow, followed by the faint, distressed call of a tiger cub. Its plaintive whines carried across the water, sharp against the muted rumble of distant thunder. She spotted him almost immediately, tiny and shivering, clinging to a half-submerged branch as the current tugged insistently at his frail frame. She waded through the water, careful to keep her balance on the hidden, slippery roots beneath. The cub's golden eyes, wide and panicked, met hers. He emitted a soft, plaintive hiss, his tiny teeth bared more from fear than threat. Mud streaked his damp coat, and a shallow scratch ran along his foreleg, crimson against the pale gold. His small body trembled with exhaustion, every muscle straining against the water's pull. Reaching him, she spoke in the lowest, gentlest whisper. "I've got you." Her hands moved with practiced care, gripping the cub securely while keeping pressure minimal. He whimpered, leaning into her chest, and she felt the rapid thump of his heart, a tiny drum of life against the chill of the afternoon. The sky above was a mixture of gray clouds and fading sun, casting a silver sheen across the swollen water. The riverbank, usually calm and familiar, was now an unpredictable maze of currents and debris. Broken branches floated past, and the scent of wet earth mixed with moss and damp fur. Each sound, the splash of water, the rustle of distant leaves, even the hum of insects, heightened the tension, and she moved with slow, deliberate precision. Then an unusual movement caught her eye, a ripple across the water's surface, too large to be mere current. A second cub, older and stronger, had emerged, struggling upstream. Its calls were urgent, almost frantic, and its eyes locked onto the smaller cub in her arms. The moment was electric. A silent conversation of recognition passed between siblings, mediated by instinct, fear, and desperation. The human heart in her chest pounded fiercely, knowing any sudden move could push the frightened cub back into the river. She adjusted her grip, taking a careful step backward, letting the water carry the older cub closer. It circled once, sniffed the edge of her coat, and then, in a motion so sudden it startled her, nuzzled its sibling, pressing their tiny faces together. A soft, trembling purr vibrated through both of them, small but unmistakable. She breathed slowly, feeling a rare, profound calm settle around her despite the chaotic water. The older cub's tail flicked in tentative rhythm, brushing her forearm as if acknowledging her presence. Around them, the flooded meadow reflected the stormy sky, water trembling in gentle waves, leaves floating on the surface like scattered emeralds. Finally, the mother appeared, emerging from the far side of the water. She paused, ears flicking, muscles coiled with watchfulness. Her eyes swept over the human and the cubs, calculating, assessing. Then, a soft rumble rolled from her throat, a low vibration that resonated with something deep in the water and the earth. The cubs responded immediately, pressing closer to one another, heads nudging in reassurance. The reunion was delicate, measured. She stayed back, arms lowering slightly, letting instinct guide the family. Slowly, the mother stepped forward, nudging each cub toward the submerged roots that led to solid ground. The cubs moved in hesitant synchronization, paws wet and muddied, tails flicking for balance. Step by step, they reached the bank, where the forest waited with shadows and shelter, leaves whispering in the breeze. She watched them disappear into the protective greenery, each movement fluid and purposeful. The storm clouds parted slightly, revealing streaks of gold light across the water. Her heart held a quiet weight, a combination of relief, awe, and lingering tension. Some miracles were fragile, built from patience, respect, and trust. Some moments, she realized, belonged not to humans but to the wild. Even as she turned to retrace her path along the muddy bank, the echo of small purrs and soft nudges stayed with her. The river, the cubs, the mother, they had left her a gift far beyond the rescue itself. A glimpse into the delicate balance of courage and compassion, and the quiet poetry of survival. The unusual sign came in a sudden tremor of movement along the riverbank. A small shape slipping from the brush, pausing mid-step, ears swiveling. It was the cub from before, now stronger, yet still wary, its damp fur clinging in streaks, mud drying into mottled patterns across its back. Its golden eyes flicked nervously between the forest and the water, a quiet tension radiating from every tense muscle. She crouched low, careful to make herself smaller, less threatening. "Easy, you're safe," she whispered, barely audible over the river's soft murmur. The cub tilted its head, unsure, and a tiny hiss escaped, more of curiosity than aggression. Each careful step she took toward him was measured, slow, patient, giving him space to trust again. The wind carried the scent of wet leaves and the faint aroma of river mud. Sunlight glinted off rippling water, casting fractured patterns across the forest floor. Every sound, the distant call of a bird, the rustle of unseen creatures, the soft slap of water against roots, heightened the fragile balance of this moment. The cub's ears flicked constantly, whiskers trembling, tail swishing in hesitant rhythm. Then, from the trees, the mother emerged once more. Her eyes scanned the human first, assessing, calculating. Her body was taut with vigilance, muscles rippling beneath her striped fur, yet there was no immediate threat. She inched closer, paws sinking silently into the damp earth, each step measured. The cub stiffened, chest rising and falling quickly, but she kept her tone low and gentle, allowing instinct to guide the reunion. The cub approached cautiously, pressing against the human's outstretched hand, sniffing the air, gauging safety. The mother's low rumble vibrated through the clearing, resonating with the cub. In that moment, the tension eased slightly, the smallest acknowledgement of recognition and trust. A fallen branch nearby shifted in the wind, startling the cub. Its ears flattened, but she remained still, a calming presence, letting the cub's instincts recalibrate. Slowly, the cub pressed closer to the mother, brushing sides with the familiar striped pattern. A soft chirp of relief, almost inaudible, escaped from the tiny throat. The mother circled the cub, gentle nudges and careful head presses communicating reassurance. She remained cautious, eyes alert for any sign of danger, but her posture softened, muscles easing. Step by step, the cub mirrored her movement, learning to trust the space, the water, and the human who had saved him. She lowered her hands, letting the cub find the ground beneath its paws. Tiny claws pressed into soft mud, legs shaking but steadying. The mother's tail flicked, brushing lightly against her offspring, guiding him forward. Together, they moved toward the forest's edge, paws sinking into the earth, tails swaying in quiet rhythm. The sunlight filtered through leaves, casting golden streaks on wet fur and glistening mud. The river whispered behind them, carrying the scent of wet soil and the echo of quiet purrs. Birds called softly from distant branches, their songs threading through the air like delicate music. She watched them disappear into the shadows, small figures moving with deliberate grace, the bond between mother and cub unmistakable. The riverbank seemed to exhale around her, tension easing into a quiet serenity. As she stepped back, boots leaving shallow imprints in the mud, a gentle warmth filled her chest. Some moments, she realized, were meant to be witnessed only, not held. Trust had been tested, patience rewarded, and life preserved. She walked along the bank, carrying the memory of golden eyes and soft growls, knowing that the river, the cubs, and the mother had left her with a gift far beyond words. The unusual sign was a soft rustle of leaves, almost imperceptible against the river's gentle murmur. A golden paw emerged briefly from the brush, then another, followed by the familiar striped pattern of the mother and her cub. They moved cautiously, the cub brushing against its mother's side, each step tentative but confident. She remained still, letting them set the pace, heart steady despite the lingering tension from earlier rescues. The river behind her gleamed under the afternoon sun, ripples catching the light like scattered jewels. The air was heavy with the scent of wet earth and moss, a mingling of forest and river that seemed to hold its breath along with her. The cub paused, glancing toward her with eyes that reflected recognition and the faintest trace of gratitude. She whispered, "Go, be free." The words were soft, almost lost in the wind, yet they carried the weight of all that had passed, the struggle, the care, the delicate trust earned. The mother nudged the cub forward, and together they stepped toward the shelter of the dense forest. Paws pressed into soft mud, tails flicking in silent communication, bodies moving with a grace born of instinct and survival. The cub's confidence grew with each step, following the gentle guidance of its mother, the bond between them unmistakable. Around them, the forest seemed to exhale. Birds called from the canopy, leaves rustled in the breeze, and the river hummed a quiet rhythm. Light filtered through the trees in golden streaks, illuminating wet fur and sparkling water alike. The air was calm, a soft, sustaining silence that held the moment like a fragile treasure. She watched as they disappeared into the shadows, small figures merging with the forest's embrace. A soft chirp from the cub, almost a whisper, echoed faintly before fading entirely. The mother's protective rumble lingered, a steady reminder of the life restored, the trust regained. For a long moment, she remained on the riverbank, breathing in the mixture of river and forest, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. Every detail, the trembling paws, the cautious nudges, the soft purrs, was etched into memory. Some experiences, she realized, were meant not for words but for feeling, carried silently within the heart. The wind shifted, rustling reeds and leaves, carrying away the last traces of disturbance in the water. She stepped back slowly, boots pressing into the soft mud, leaving faint marks that would soon be washed away. In their place remained a quiet testament to courage, patience, and compassion. The river continued its gentle song, the sunlight shimmering across the water in fleeting diamonds. Shadows stretched long as the day faded, painting the shore in hues of gold and amber. She turned her gaze from the forest, heart full, knowing that the moment would linger forever, an invisible thread connecting human and wild, courage and trust, life and survival. Even as she walked away, the cub and its mother had left her a gift that could not be measured, the delicate proof that compassion, even in the smallest gestures, could bridge worlds. The forest reclaimed its quiet, the river resumed its murmur, and she carried the memory forward, a soft, enduring reminder of the fragile, extraordinary bond between species and the quiet miracles that happen when humans choose care over fear.